Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from the Noble Queue, and in this video I'm going to be looking at the Tier 9 Tech Tree British Heavy Fighter, the Gloster P.228. Hello there, and here on an airfield somewhere in England is the Gloster P.228. Well, you would never have seen this. This plane never existed, not even in prototype form. It was a design produced by the Gloster Company to meet specification 44 from the RAF, produced in 1946, and that called for a night fighter interceptor. Now, if you're thinking this looks somewhat like a Meteor, the Tier 7 British light fighter, you'd be right. It's a two-seater version with swept-back wings and considerably beefed up. In the game, therefore, it is classified as a heavy fighter, and when you have it specialised, it features 4 Aiden cannons. Those are 30mm, and those are devastating weapons. It also carries an abundance of rockets under the wings, making this a tactically versatile aircraft, even if the airframe itself is rather stiff and rather slow. Having said that, let's go and look at the numbers. If you don't want to look at those and you'll be missing a lot, then use a link below the video to skip ahead to another part of it. Here we have a spreadsheet showing all of the Tier 9 heavies. There are only 3 of them, as you can see here. Now, if you don't know how this spreadsheet works, below is a link to an instructional video. Go and have a look at that, and then you'll know what's going on here. So let's talk about the characteristics of the Gloster P.228 and its competitors. And if we look at gun armament, we can see that the rating is 79 and the cumulative DPS is 1320. Theoretically second best in class, but it is as near as makes no difference to the ME262 HG2, which has got slightly better rating and a slightly better cumulative DPS. There is a drawback to the HG2's guns that we'll discuss shortly. It's considerably in excess of the F2H Banshee, but then to compensate for that, the Banshee is a far more nimble aircraft, and that's what you would use against the other heavies. What we have on the Gloster P.228 is 4 30mm Aidens. That's when this aircraft is specialised, of course. They're 20mm prior to that. 330 DPS, rate of fire 300, and a decent range of 2,625 feet. However, we have a miserly auto-aim angle, the amount that you can be off target by, and the game will correct your aim, of only 2 degrees. The dispersion angle is pretty normal for cannons. That's the way the shells spread out as they leave the muzzle of the cannon at 0.6. The overheat time is a slightly tricky 4 seconds, a little bit on the short side. Now, the shell velocity is not particularly high. It's less than 1400 feet per second. That means that the lead with these Aidens has to be quite considerable, and that makes it easier to miss. However, the good news is you've only got one weapons group, unlike the preceding P.1056. So if you do get the lead right, all of your shells are going to land, allowing for RNG, of course. Compared to the HG2, which nominally has better guns, you've got much better range, and you've got a higher shell velocity, and that's the reason why the 262's guns are actually pretty tricky. The lead is a lot worse than even the P.228. Different philosophy on the Banshee. You've got 20mm cannons, which handle more sweetly. Good range on them, and of course the shell velocity is very high, very nearly 1900 feet, which means that lead is not so much of an issue. When it comes to ordnance, we're best in class. The rating is 40, which is considerably in excess of either of the other 2 planes, and you've got 16 RP-3 rockets capable of doing 24,000 cumulative damage. However, note that resupply time of 160 seconds, 2 2/3 minutes. So you're only going to be doing this at mining plants, and then perhaps using the aircraft in a more traditional air superiority role for at least 2.5 to 2 2/3 minutes before you get your ordnance back. However, this is powerful ordnance, and certainly will help you flip a sector, especially if you're in a game where perhaps you're shy of ground attackers and bombers. Not so common at Tier 9 on the EU server these days. On the NA server, different story. You could very well be the most potent ground attacking threat on your team. Survivability is high. It's needed. It's 24, which again is considerably in excess of the other aircraft. You've got 900 hit points, 46 damage resistance, which is okay without being special, and you've got the top figure of 60 for fire resistance, which is probably going to allow you to comfortably mount a first aid dressing package under any circumstances. Airspeed is not fantastic news. It is pretty fast. Rating is 79, but as you can see, the other two aircraft are higher speed planes. The maximum boost speed, and we've got a figure missing here, so I'll just go to unhide that now. Live in the video. Show, there we go. Let's go to cruise speed then. The cruise speed is 381, which is less than the other two aircraft in this comparison. And the same is true of the boost maximum speed. Although you're nearly up to the other two aircraft there, it does boost quite nicely. And you have got 30 seconds of boost, which at least is 5 seconds better than the Banshee and a whole 10 seconds better than the ME262. Dive speed is okay at 683. You'll probably be able to try keep up with diving 262s or Banshees if they're trying to escape from you. Watch out for the climb rate that's coming up later though. Airspeed figures all done, so we'll go to manoeuvrability. And a bit like the ME262, it's a bit of a brick. It doesn't really turn particularly quickly at 15.5 seconds. It's almost identical for the most part to the ME262. You'll be competitive with those, but basically if the ME262 gets the advantage behind you, you're not going to be able to outturn it unless you do something with manoeuvrability specifically. And what I've just said about the ME262 is definitely going to apply to the Banshee. This is much more nimble and you're not going to want to get into a turn fight. And there you can see a twin problem. If you're not that nimble, you're not that maneuverable, and your airspeed is not enough to get you away from the other heavies, basically you need to plan ahead and try and make sure you put yourself in a position which doesn't allow a player in another heavy at tier 9, let alone tier 10, to get the drop on you. Altitude performance, again, fairly similar story. It's okay, but it's not as good as the other two heavies. They're not going to be coming at you from massively higher in a steep dive most of the time, but they can outperform you, which means that you can't do the same to them. Thrust to weight figures are interesting, however. Now, we don't know how drag is implemented in the game. I'm pretty sure it is. So this is not a fail-safe guide to acceleration, but as you can see, the thrust to weight ratio here is considerably in excess of the other two aircraft, which means that this aircraft in theory should accelerate pretty rapidly. And that's good news, especially if you're trying to catch a dawdling 262 or Banshee up. You'll be able to do it quite quickly before they can engage all of their speed, because they've got this lag in acceleration. And I will say that my experience is that the Gloster P.228 is a very nice aircraft to fly, and this is probably part of the reason why, because it will speed up quickly when you say go. Now, there's not much point in looking at the worst in class figures. We've only got 3 aircraft here, so even best in class figures are going to be third worst in class figures as well, so we won't drop down there. But let me say where I think this positions this aircraft. Well, I think the guns handle more nicely than the ME262, so that makes this a better bomber and heavy killer, or indeed a ground attack attacker killer. The aircraft flies nicely, and that may be something to do with that power to weight ratio, thrust to weight ratio that I've just talked about. You need to think about where you're going to place the aircraft. If there are opposing heavy players, you need to be sure that you're always attacking them when you have the advantage, or you're not where they can get an advantage over you. So you have to think about it. But tactically, that ordnance makes this very flexible as well, because you have the ability to flip sectors, not only by shooting down aircraft, but by taking out multiple ground targets as well. The one snag is there that the resupply time is 160 seconds, and incidentally, you can't do anything about that. There's no outboard weapon slot on this plane. But in today's meta on the EU server, where you will find lots of bombers, this is a perfect bomber killer, and that applies pretty much to tier 10 aircraft as well as tier 9s. And for my money, this is my favourite heavy at tier 9, because it has that punch and the gun handling to deal with those bombers. And then you've got the tactical flexibility to be able to take ground targets yourself. All that said, let's go and see how I've set up the aircraft. Here we are back with the P228, and my aircraft, as usual, is specialised. That means I have all of the equipment and consumable slots available. When you first get this aircraft, and bear in mind it's a tech tree aircraft, What you'll be missing, out of 5 equipment slots, you'll be missing 1 on the airframe and also 1 out of 2 on the engine. You've also got 5 consumable slots. Only 1 of those will be missing. That will be on the airframe. Now I'm going to pop this back into specialist configuration, and then we'll have a look at how I've set the aircraft up. My philosophy here is that because this aircraft is not terrifically fast, I've built it for manoeuvrability on the basis that I expect to be dogfighting other heavies and I want to outmaneuver them. That may not be your philosophy, so what I will do in the post-build effects is show you indicative numbers for a speed build and also a tank build if you want to reinforce this aircraft, rather like some people reinforce their P61s. Okay, so here we are, and given that it's a manoeuvrability build, you won't be surprised that I've got a lightweight wing frame and a lightweight power unit in place. What I might do differently if I were to reconfigure this particular build is take off this high-speed gas turbine and put on the uprated engine instead, just to keep the aircraft generally fast rather than reasonably fast under boost. However, this is the way I played the plane in the replays that you're going to see, so let's talk it through. Unsurprisingly, with those cannons with the 0.6 dispersion, I've gone for accuracy and I've mounted a gun sight. Now, even under a tank build, where your alternative would be a cockpit armour, that only really reduces the injury factor to your pilot. So I probably would still keep the gun sight even with that, and you'll see that's what I've done. G-suit, increased manoeuvrability at high speeds, probably not applicable to a fairly slow heavy. Navigational radio equipment, increased view range and decrease range at which you're detected. I don't think it's particularly useful. You're going to want to get up close to the bombers anyway. You're going to be seen. This is more the type of equipment that I would put on perhaps a ground attacker or a bomber. So gun sight it is. Technological level 400, and the bonus characteristics there, I've got 5% accuracy when firing at moving targets. That's important, especially as I've chosen gas-operated action, which we'll talk about in a few moments. 5% pilot's resistance to injury, and 3% accuracy of forward-firing offensive armament. So I've worked on the accuracy, as you can see. If we just look at the other characteristics that are available, you've got chances of inflicting critical damage and fire. And with these big guns, that's not what I tend to do. I tend to reserve those characteristics for low DPS guns, and these are pretty high DPS. And therefore, let's talk about the lightweight wing frame. And there you can see, again, technological 400. So that's giving 9.5% extra roll maneuverability. This aircraft does not roll very well, so that's not particularly interesting. But 2.8% maneuverability in turns is good. And of course, if we look at the maximums that are available, they're 13% and 4%, 4.2% respectively. So if you are going to go for this, probably calibrate it as much as possible. Negative effects currently are 4.6% loss of aircraft HP, not great, and 7.5% extra chance of the wings receiving critical damage, also not great. But fortunately, you're not going to be fighting in dogfights except with other heavies. You're just going to try and run away from fighters. You probably won't be able to do that with this build, though. That's something to bear in mind. An airfield or an airbase is not this plane's natural habitat with this build, because you're likely to find things like MEP-1101s, F-86 Sabres, MiG-15 Bisses as well, all of which will be able to keep up with you and shoot you down. So you need to pick your sectors under this build. That's probably true of any build, to be fair. And just on the negatives, you can see that they will go up to 6.6 and 10% respectively. We didn't have a look at what I'd actually managed with the guns. You've gone up to 14%, the maximum would be 21%. The negative effect there, of course, is your pilot is more likely to get injured, which is a pain in the backside. 12% currently, I think, yep, and 17% at maximum. We just concentrate on the manoeuvrability side on the engine. We've got the lightweight power unit, and at the moment, again, technological level 400, so there's more to come. I've got 6.5% yaw manoeuvrability and another 2.8% manoeuvrability in turns. The negative effect is that the engine is more likely to be damaged or receive critical damage. The maximum's there, 10% on the yaw manoeuvrability, 4.2% manoeuvrability in turns, and then 17% more likelihood of critical damage to the engine as well. Bonus characteristics here, acceleration without boost, 1%, yeah, okay, and another 1.5% cruise speed, which is what I tend to do rather than choose the other alternatives, which is acceleration with boost activated. One that would be useful here, and probably I would pick if I were to reassemble this piece of equipment is reducing the engine's likelihood of receiving critical damage by 5%. That's the second characteristic from the bottom there. If you're really going to major on manoeuvrability, then there is a 2% yaw manoeuvrability characteristic. So as I say, I'd probably drop the acceleration without boost here and put on the second from bottom characteristic to reduce the chance of the engine receiving criticals. Now, I tend to pick high-speed gas turbine because I really don't like fires, and uprated engines increase the risk of fire. However, I can say that the survivability figure over here, which is the base of 60, and it hasn't been affected by my choices of equipment, would probably go down to around about, I don't know, 45, say, something like that, with an uprated engine. And even at 45, I would probably still pick the first aid dressing package. So if you want to keep the aircraft generally fast, instead of using the high-speed gas turbine here, put in an uprated engine. Currently, again, technological level 400. No calibration on this aircraft, worth mentioning. 6.5% improvement in acceleration with boost, and 3.7% maximum speed with boost activated to the bonus characteristics. Those will go up to maximums of 10 and 5.8%. Respectively. The adverse effect is the loss of 15% of boost availability, and by the time you get this up to the maximum level, it will be 20%. Therefore, on the bonus characteristics, I have picked cooldown rate to get the boost back as quickly as possible, two characteristics there totaling 15%, and I've also offset that negative boost effect by 5% there with the characteristic 2 from the bottom. And these are probably the characteristics with which I would stick. You can probably just see there you've got acceleration and maximum speed boosts on the other bonus characteristics. These are not for me. Might do that on a faster plane though. Finally, I think all of your choices on the forward-firing weapon slot are probably valid. More burst length would be welcome. Extra range is probably welcome to many of you. Tends not to work so well for me. My limited sight means that once I get above about, I don't know, certainly 3,000 feet, although these weapons are accurate to 2,600 feet, my eyesight doesn't really permit me to get the advantage of long gun barrels. But the good thing about the long gun barrels, of course, is they do not affect your accuracy. So if you're concerned about accuracy, that's another reason to pick these long gun barrels. However, I've gone for more damage output, which means I've picked off the gas-operated action. So bear in mind that all of these choices are probably valid, and some of you will be saying, I really do prefer the long gun barrels or the reinforced bolt carriers. Great, mount them. I'm going to show you my favourite, which is the gas-operated action, but I like dealing damage with these, and if you're firing at tier 10 bombers, personally, I think you need damage. So what have we got here? Again, technological level 400, which means there's much more to come. Currently, we've got 10.3% rate of fire increase, which also increases your damage, of course, because you're dealing it 10.3% more quickly. That will go up to a maximum of 15.2%. The negative effect is, of course, the accuracy, minus 10.2%, and that's going to go up to 14.2% when you've got this fully calibrated. On the bonus characteristics, I've tried to get the weapons to cool down a little bit more quickly with a 10% cooldown rate there, improvement. Then I've picked off the accuracy of the forward-firing offensive armament to offset the loss of accuracy. And then I've also gone for another 2.5% rate of fire. If you're going for rate of fire, why wouldn't you pick more rate of fire? Other bonus characteristics there, chance of causing a fire. These are heavy hitting weapons, so causing fire is not that important in my opinion. You could get another 5% cooldown rate, but it means losing another valuable bonus characteristic, one which I choose not to do. And then there's another 10% chance of causing a fire, which again I've discounted. As far as the consumables are concerned, because I haven't mounted an uprated engine, but to be truthful, even if I did, I would still choose this. I've gone for the first aid dressing package. It is a pain when your part is shot out and you lose all your accuracy of your weapons. And of course, if you're chasing bombers with these, it's particularly those who've ramped up their critical chances by 95% by using gold ammo, turret armor, etc., 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 you're going to want to try and heal your pilot as quickly as possible. And nowadays, I'm beginning to think that on your favourite aircraft, you might very well want to go for the emergency medical kit here, the gold consumable, because that will prevent your pilot from being shot out instantly after you've just healed him for another 10 seconds. And I'm beginning to think that with the amount of criticals that there are in the game, certainly those 95% of rear gunners, it's getting hard to avoid the conclusion that you should be using the gold consumables, as much as I'm loath to recommend them. Anyway, I've put on a standard first aid dressing package. The state of the game may lead you to put on the gold version of this consumable, sorry to say. Again, the philosophy here is that I can't get away from heavies using speed. I want to outmaneuver them, so pneumatic control assist here for 10 seconds of extra maneuverability. And then we're going for engine cooling. And what this does is give you 10 extra seconds of boost on top of whatever you may have. If you've got none, this won't activate, so don't activate it then. And then an engine restart to get the engine back if I have my engine shot out when I'm following a bomber, for instance. And again, the same argument applies here as did to the first aid dressing kit. If you're getting your engine shot out all the time by 95% improved critical chance gunners on bombers, then the gold consumable may be your answer, because again, that gives you 10 seconds protection after you've activated it. And 10 seconds is probably going to be enough, be the difference between you shooting down a bomber with a gunner like that and it destroying you. Now, I'm not going to recommend the gold ammunition here. I think the universal is good enough for most, and of course it doesn't cost money. But if you are going to put gold on, then you would use the fragmentation ammunition for autocannons. But otherwise, don't stick with the standard ammunition. I'm sure you're not by the time you're getting to a Tier 9 aircraft. You've worked out that universal ammunition is far superior. Mount this one. Okay. Now, given that we've got 3 different builds coming up in the post-build effects, I'm going to talk about skills for all 3 types of builds. That's manoeuvrability, speed, and tank builds, roughly. Let's do that now. I've brought up the pilot dialog box for my P.228 pilot. This is not a premium plane, so you will be dedicating a pilot to it. And this particular pilot has got skills that are suitable for the manoeuvrability build. And what I've done is I've gone for aerodynamics expert first. That will have a positive effect not only on manoeuvrability equipment, but also speed equipment. So it's a good place to start even with the speed build. And then, because I want more manoeuvrability, I've gone for aerobatics expert as my second skill. Then I probably want to improve the accuracy first, marksman 1, and then go to engine guru 1. I'm then going to work through battle tested, mainly because that reduces the chance of injury to the pilot by 20%, although there's another beneficial effect insofar as if your control surface is damaged, the effect is lessened by 25%. That's useful, particularly in a fighter. It's still useful here if you're fighting another heavy. Then I'd drop it, probably get marksman 2, go back through battle tested, drop it, get marksman 3, and then I would be working up towards eventually probably resilience. Now with the speed build, fairly similar approach. Still start with aerodynamics expert, provided you've got equipment mounted, of course. But then I'd go straight into marksman 1, probably through cruise flight rather than battle tested to try and improve the speed, go up to engine guru 1, work my way through cruise flight again and then drop it, go to marksman 2, you can see where this is going, work my way through cruise flight again, get up to engine guru 3, and then probably would go cruise flight as my final skill, and that's a long way in the future. Now, what would you do with a tank build? Not something I've particularly done, so I'm thinking on the fly here. You're probably going to want to have protection expert fairly quickly. It's just a debate of whether you'd go aerodynamics expert first or not. I would, but then possibly I would go for protection expert. Increases the positive effect of the mounted equipment on aircraft durability and resistance to critical damage by 40%. I think if you're going for a tank build, actually I've just changed my mind, this would be the first skill I'd go for. Then I'd go for aerodynamics expert, and then probably go back through the build process on marksman 1 and engine guru 1, and I'd probably route it through battle tested. This one I'd get, then drop in favour of this one, get it again, drop it in favour of this one, and then probably put battle tested on as not exactly the final skill, but a skill a long way in the future. So that's my thoughts briefly on the skills for 3 different builds. Let's go and have a look at the post-build effects. I've just thought, some of you may be wondering why I haven't picked demolition expert here. Good skill, but I think the rockets are pretty good, and you don't need to use the 2 skill points on these. If you feel like it, this is not a bad skill to use, but as I say, the opportunity cost, whether you're using 2 skill points on that, as opposed to some of the other skills, I think is too great. Right, so now let's go and see the post-build effects. Here we have a spreadsheet showing the build effects of my choices, plus indicative figures for 2 other builds. What we have here in column C and D are the base figures for the plane. You've seen these before in the aircraft statistics section if you watch that. Then we have the effects of my choices in columns E and F. Just as a reminder, I've got a gun sight, a lightweight wing frame, a lightweight power unit, a high-speed gas turbine, and a gas-operated action. Those figures by the sides of those acronyms there, all 400, indicating that I haven't taken the technological level of any of the pieces of equipment beyond the base. The difference between the two, expressed in absolute terms in column G, and the difference in percentage terms is in column H. Now the other 2 builds, column I and F are speed build, and column M and N is a tank build. Let's see what's happened with my choices first, and we've got an improvement in the rating of the guns from 79 to 89, largely because of the improvement in the rate of fire. So let's talk about that now. We've gone up to 338 rate of fire. That's a 12.8% increase over the 300 base figure, which of course gives you 12.8% more damage. So that's reflected there, 372 per gun as opposed to 330. This totals 1489 cumulative DPS, an improvement of 169 over the 320. Every little helps when you're trying to destroy those high hit point bombers. No effect on the range of the weapons. I'm happy with 2600 feet. With long gun barrels, you'll get 2 effects. That range, probably get it up to 3000 feet, maybe a bit more, I guess. You'll also remove the adverse effect on accuracy of the other 2 pieces of equipment, including here the gas-operated action, which means that this figure is going to improve. Anyway, if we talk about the auto angle, the amount you can be off target by, and the game will correct your aim, we've got a 5% increase. 2 degrees is pretty poor in the first place. 2.1 is still not great, but it's better than 2. Because of the adverse effect of the gas-operated action equipment, we've only been able to get the dispersion angle, the way that the shells spread out as they leave the muzzle of your gun, down from 0.6 to 0.5. Okay, it's still a welcome improvement, but if you use the long gun barrels, you're going to do significantly better, and you might prefer that. Overheat time is unaffected at 4 seconds, a bit short, and also that shell velocity, which is low, is not affected, and there's nothing you can do about that. So shooting anything banking is going to be a bit of a problem. With this build, there is no effect on the ordnance, so the rating remains the same at 40, and so do the figures. They're all the base figures, as you can see there. Survivability. We've lost a point, gone down to 23, and that's because we've lost 41 hit points. Inevitable with the manoeuvrability build, not particularly welcome. Just something that I put up with. You'll see the alternatives in the other builds in a moment. Damage resistance has gone down to 46, but the fire resistance is still 60, which means that I'm comfortable with not using a fire extinguisher and not using skill points on fire resistance and firefighter. Airspeed, we've got an improvement by 3 points, up to 82. We've got the cruise speed up a little bit, 8 miles an hour to 389. You're not going to notice. Boost maximum speed is up by 30. That is a difference. You'll be able to catch up with things a little bit quicker. 5.2% improvement. We've lost 3 seconds of boost with all that, and of course the dive speed is not affected. Now, with the manoeuvrability build, you would be looking for a significant effect on manoeuvrability, and it is for a heavy. It's gone up to 39, so you should be able to duel successfully with certainly tier A9 heavies. You may need to think very carefully about some of those heavies which are highly manoeuvrable, of course, at tier 8, such as your F82s, your P82s, and of course, above all, the P61. That's up by nearly 26%. The turn time has come down to 14 seconds from 15.5. The roll rate is up to 86. This is still not great, so rolling's not a feature of this aircraft. And the key thing I'll just draw your attention to, which you can do nothing about, because this aircraft doesn't respond to instructions quickly to change direction, that would tend to suggest that you shouldn't go for a manoeuvrability build, and it might tip you in favour of not doing this. We've got a small improvement in the altitude performance rating to 73. This is because the climb rate has gone up to 444 feet per second, 75 feet per second improvement. Other effects not listed in the UI, 10% cooldown rate on the guns, which is welcome, no effects on the ordnance. The next 3 characteristics on survivability here, these all come from using the seasonal camo. So summer for summer, winter for winter, marine for marine, and so on, desert for desert. These effects are across the board on all 3 builds. For this particular build, The ability of the wings to resist critical damage has gone down by 4.5%. The pilot has lost 7% of his ability to resist injury, and the engines have lost 12% of their chance of resisting criticals as well. So try not to get shot in this plane. Airspeed, 12.1% acceleration with boost improvement, 15% engine cooldown rate improvement, and 4.4% acceleration improvement without boost. Manoeuvrability, 11.1% extra. The pilot, so far, has got Aerodynamics Expert, Aerobatics Expert, Engine Guru 1, Marksman 1, and Eagle-Eyed, which is just building up to Battle Tested, which itself will be dropped in favour of Next and Marksman 2. So there's a lot more to come from this pilot. So in addition to being able to calibrate this equipment and improving the effects, with a better pilot, you're also going to get better effects as well. We could use a speed build, in which case I would recommend staying with the gun sight, but now we've gone to a polished skin, which technological rating is 426 in this comparison. I highlight this because my figures should be taken as indicative. You could have a different technological rate, you could pick different bonus characteristics, you might use a universal camouflage instead of the seasonal camouflages, and so on and so on, so your figures are always going to be a bit different from mine. Then we have put on the uprated engine, high-speed gas turbine, and gas-operated action. So there's going to be no effects on the guns and the ordnance. Let's skip over those because they're exactly the same as the previous comparison. What happened to survivability? Well, we've returned to the base figure of 900 hit points, but we have now got a reduction in the fire resistance. We can improve that, as you'll see in the next build, by the appropriate selection of a bonus characteristic, but you can't get it back to 60. And that still loses you a point down to 23. It's just that how you lose that point is different to the previous build. Airspeed, well, you would be hoping for a significant increase, and it's gone up by 15.2% in terms of its points. It's gone up to 91. The cruise speed is significantly greater at 453. That's 72 miles an hour improvement to nearly 19%. Boost maximum speed, a little bit faster than the manoeuvrability build, but not much more. 605, you've gone up by 34 miles an hour. You're still losing 3 seconds of boost. No effect on the dive speed, of course. The disadvantage of this build, of course, is that the thing becomes a bit more like a flying brick, and the rating for manoeuvrability has gone down by 1 from the original to 30. You've got a slight increase on the base turn time to 15.7. You've got a slight improvement on the roll rate. You're not going to notice it, of 1 degree per second. And then on the altitude performance, very marginal improvement up to 445 feet per second compared to the manoeuvrability build. Other effects, we've already talked about guns. Survivability, there's the 3 for the livery, or camouflage. Now you've only got the pilot being more susceptible to injury, the same as previously, 7% more chance of it. Airspeed, 15% improvement in the cooldown rate, that's welcome. 12.1% acceleration with boost. 13% dive acceleration, well, it's nice to have. Although it may send you into the floor if you're not careful and you're using your rockets fairly close to ground targets, and 13.5% acceleration without boost, which is a distinct improvement on the previous build. Manoeuvrability, we've lost 0.6% of your manoeuvrability. You're not going to notice. Same pilot as before, same skills. Brings me on to the tank build, not something I've tried before. And what would we do here? You could put cockpit armor on, but the point of cockpit armor is to prevent injury to the pilot, so that's not really part of a tank build, although it might be something you would consider if you don't want to use, for instance, a gold consumable to try and prevent your pilot being shot out twice in 3 seconds by a very nasty rear gunner off an EF-131 or particularly an Su-10. Gun sight remains in place. Reinforced airframe, technological level 426, I think that is. Yes, it is. Engine armor protection, technological level 400, high-speed gas turbine and gas-operated action as before. So, no effects on the guns, all the ordnance, let's skip over those. Now the survivability figure, and this is where we would expect a change. We have rating's gone up to 28 from the original 24. We have more hit points to play with. 117, 13% increase, and of course remember you can calibrate the equipment I've put on to improve this figure even further. Damage resistance is up to 52, and we've actually got 66 on the fire resistance, and because I picked off that bonus characteristic, that helps in addition, and managed to improve it over the original figure. Airspeed gone up a little, rating is 81. considerably less than the speed build, of course, as you would expect, but we've still got 406 miles an hour cruise speed, which is a 25 mile an hour increase. 17 mile an hour increase on the boost maximum speed to 588. Still lost 3 seconds of boost, and the dive speed remains unchanged. Manoeuvrability ever so slightly up 1 rating point. We've managed to very slightly increase the turn time, but you're not going to notice. The roll has gone down. So it's already a bad figure. You might just say, so what? All the other figures unchanged. And then the climb rate has gone up to 441 feet per second. So pretty much across the 3 builds, very similar figures for those. Other effects. Guns we've already discussed, no change there. That's coming from the livery. That's across all 3 builds. 32.5% engine damage resistance, 10% wing resistance to criticals, extra 10% tail resistance to criticals, and 5% improvement in the pilot injury resistance. So if you are going to be following around EF131s and SU10s, this may be the build for you. Airspeed, got a 15% engine cooldown rate improvement, 12.1% acceleration with boost, 3% acceleration without boost, not going to be so slippy through the air. You've got a marginal improvement in your manoeuvrability, and just as a reminder, we've got the pilot with the same skills as before. I hope that's given you some ideas on how you might want to build this aircraft. I must admit, I'm beginning to think I might change my manoeuvrability build, even if I choose to keep it. I think I might try it with an uprated engine as opposed to the high-speed gas turbine. The tank build I've never tried, so I can't really comment on it. If you want to, please leave your comments below the video if this is your preferred choice. I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are. And then there's a speed build for comparison there. And I think this is tricky, the speed build, because the other heavies are just inherently faster and you're never going to be able to compete with the specialized versions of those planes. But this might be for you, particularly if you want to go down hunting bombers and ground attackers. And with that, let's move on and see how this aircraft performed in battle. Here's the map for the battle that you're about to see. It's Plateau, Blazing Sky variant, 5 sectors, they're all garrisons. So the central garrison is tactically important because it allows easy access to all the other garrisons, but there are no strategically important sectors on this map. If we look at the order of battle, it's about as bad as it could get for a P.228. It's a tier 10 battle. On my team there are 3, count them, 3 specialised tier 10 bombers, an Su-10 and 2 EF-131s, plus a specialised IL-40P ground attacker. And we also have a tier 9 Yak-19. And on the enemy team, there are 4 specialised tier 10 bombers, 3 EF-131s, also an Su-10. They also have a tier 10 Yak-30, which more than counterbalances the Yak-19 that we have, and then at tier 9 they have an attacker. And the way to win this battle is to basically try and shoot down as many bombers as possible, maybe the ground attacker as well, and try and flip sectors faster than the enemy flips them, because you're certainly not going to be able to defend any of these sectors. The one saving grace is this is just about as bad a map as it can be for bombers, because there are no special objects, no special sites of strategic interest, there are just garrisons. So let's go and see how this battle worked out. This is a natively recorded replay file. It's not a World of Warplanes team replay file. This means that you'll see me looking around, you'll see me using the sniper mode, and you'll have an accurate reticle. And here we're going to go straight to the nearest garrison. I know from experience that I'm likely to find bombers coming from the local garrison to what is on the right on the screen there. From the enemy will flood towards here, so I want to get this one, and then with a bit of luck I'll find bombers to shoot. So we're going for the air defence heavies first. Get the lead reasonably right from the start. Down that heavy goes. And my team have already managed to capture this, so could be thinking about going to the centre here, but I'm alert to the possibility of bombers coming from the other garrison. They haven't quite captured it yet, but it won't be long, I'm fairly sure. And they now have. And suddenly I spot a bomber off to my left. And here we go. Now this is a tier 10 bomber. It might have a very nasty rear gunner, but I've got good guns and I've improved the DPS. I'm going to go for it. And the whole of my battle is going to be orientated around finding these bombers and killing them as often as possible. get some good shots into him there. I'm trying to get ahead of him here, but he does the right thing. He turns into me a little, so I don't get as good a pass on him this time round as I would like. And now I'm just going to settle for the fact that I am behind him. I'm going to pelt him with the guns. He's on half health. Hasn't done an awful lot of damage to me. So I'm going to guess he hasn't got a significantly improved gunner. So that's good news. At least one of the bombers hasn't got a really nasty rear gunner. That's him down. What next? Well, with 3 sectors to 2 down, I can see a EVP-215 coming towards me, and very luckily those rockets which it fired must have fired too early because none of them hit me. I'm not going to turn with it. That's not a manoeuvrable plane, but this isn't manoeuvrable enough even under the build that I have to be able to take on this plane in a turn fight. And as I try and leave him, I find another EF-131, and this is heavily damaged, so I want to knock it down. And down it goes. And I've been quite lucky so far. Bombers have come convenient to me at the right times. They've come to me damaged, and I've got the guns to take them out. Now we come back for the BVP-215. Tricky to hit these, and I've got difficult cannons to land because of the low shell velocity, but we get the job done. Have a quick assessment of the tactical situation. Look up. There's a Seahawk. It's flying towards me now. Try and shoot it, and now I've got to get away from it. Again, not a particularly manoeuvrable aircraft, but one that can outmaneuver me. And I'm going to take damage here from sort of all right guns from the Seahawk. Try and throw it off. Try and get at least 4,000 feet, and I would recommend more. 5,000 would be better. Some of you might even go for 6,000. Now the Seahawk is trying to evade. Get some good shots on it, but I don't destroy it, and now facing a J7W2, I think that is. Get some shots into that. Fortunately, I'm able to damage its engine and my own. I managed to repair, so I get away from it. Now I'm going to come back and try and pass it for a second time and get rid of it. And we do just that. Actually got major contribution there. And as I turn, another bomber comes towards me, and this time it's the Su-10. One wonders what the gun is like on this. And it's got 2/3 of its health. I reduced that in the first pass quite considerably. Swing round. And either he's choosing not to shoot at me because he's concentrating on bombing, or he hasn't got that good a rear gun, and now he realises he's being fired at, and he goes up to try and get all of his guns to bear. We're still able to damage him. I've still got about half health, which isn't too bad for a tier 9 against all these bombers. There's an EF-131. He's pretty badly damaged as well. He's a lot more damaged now. And he blows up because I set him on fire. And we've done a good job so far. We've actually shot down 4 bombers. And as I speak, another one heads towards this garrison. I obviously picked the right place to be in this battle. He's heavily damaged too. My cup overrunneth with good luck at the moment. So that's another bomber that goes down. Looking to see what's behind me. It's a BVP again. And it being a multi-role, now it's got me as a target. It will chase me for a long time. I'm just trying to get away from it. I'm trying to stay out of the garrison, because if I do get shot down, I don't want to prevent any possibility of my team, should they attack it, having to attack a full health garrison instead of a partial health one. The BVP eventually did give up. Now I'm coming back to see if I can take it out. Seahawk is playing in this area as well. Should learn the patterns of your opponent's bots. You can often predict where they will be. And I know that on this side of the map, because I've been here long enough, that I'm going to have these 2 multi-roles to contend with periodically. Heal the pilot there, after the rear gunner of the BVP-215 took him out. The Seahawk got destroyed by a teammate, and now I'm beginning to get a little bit low on health. See 3 bombers ahead of me. There's one that's very badly damaged, so that's the one I want to prioritise. That goes down. looking at the next two. Unfortunately, the nearest one to me is on full health and immediately lose my engine. One flies above me. Now, what I should have done probably is break off from this one and attack the other one. But basically, I've got myself in a very awkward spot there between two bombers with rear gunners both shooting at me. And down I go. As we spawn in, I spot that there's yet again a bomber over the garrison that I've been playing over for most of this battle. So I want to go and try and shoot that down. Let's go and see what kind of health he's got. He's being pinged by the team, so they clearly want rid of him. It's my job. About 60% health. Here is where a speed build would help. Then he turns, which is going to mitigate the effect of his rear gunner, such as it is. He's down to about 50% health by the time I get to him, and I take that 50% very gratefully. And we have another bomber. This one is on full health, and I think this may be the one that shot me down earlier. Or the one that I was chasing ill-advisedly earlier at least. You can see these guns really going to work on him. And down he goes as well. That's my 8th bomber. Nobody can say that I haven't done my job in this game. I have taken bomber after bomber after bomber. J7W2, managed to get a few good shots into him. Hopefully I've got his engine, and I have as I look back. Fly away, that means he can't chase me. Separation is going to be quick, therefore I can come back sooner and my team finishes off anyway. And I've been happy with my efforts here. On the as far as the other team is concerned, my bombers have been active, and possibly they haven't been harassed as much as the enemy team's bombers have been, and I've been doing the harassing, as you can see. I've got 8 bombers there. It looks like it's going to be a satisfactory victory, and this shows that those guns, particularly against bombers where the gunners aren't absurdly configured to do criticals, can work, even on this tier 9 heavy. Now, dive away from the enemy there, enemy multi-roll. Turn around to get a few shots into the 215. Once it had lost interest in me, see another multi-roll coming towards me, and at that point the game ends. So what we have here, nearly 13,000 points. Not the greatest personal points in the world, but that's largely because I was shooting those bombers down outside of sectors. Here's the outcome of this hard-fought battle, and as we can see from the centre, it's a 5 chevron battle, grade 1 heavy fighter, and that grows 76,801 credits, no premium account running at this time, however the bonus would have been just around 39,000 credits. Look in the message box, we can see that we have 12,100 credits expended. That was for repairing the aircraft. I was using prepaid consumables, that is, I'd bought them in advance in a sale for half price, so there were no expenses for the battle. 3,843 aircraft experience, the base there is 3,660, and other bonuses contributing 183. 192 free experience. No tokens, but there is a Hero of the Sky badge here. On the personal score tab, we can see that one of the class-specific missions was complete, unsurprisingly the one for destroying bombers and attack aircraft. The other two were 3/4 complete, which gave me the points total needed for a 5 chevron battle. Only 12,780 personal points. Again, this illustrates that sometimes personal points and doing well in a battle don't go hand in hand. 1 sector captured, 11 aerial targets destroyed. It's worth actually showing that this was 1 air defence aircraft, 2 multi-role fighters and 8 bombers. 11,407 damage to aerial targets with 28 critical hits coming off those cannons. I lost the aircraft once, capture points 320, 280 for defending and 40 for attacking. On the team score tab, we can see that was enough for 2nd place by personal points, by chevrons on my team, equal 1st actually, and it would have been by personal points, if we just reorder it, 3rd place. On the enemy team, it would have been 4th place by personal points, but 1st by chevrons. And as you can see, their bombers, unsurprisingly, were working hard. It's just as well I took them down as often as I did, otherwise we probably wouldn't have squeaked that battle. That brings me to the end of the review section of the Gloster P.228, and it has excellent weaponry, sufficient to live with tier 10 bombers. The ordnance is good. You haven't seen me use it in this video, but it will take out special objects at the mining plant military base or command centre, and I've also given you indicative figures for alternative builds, a speed build and a tank build. I hope that's given you some ideas on how you might like to set this aircraft up. It's a personal favourite of mine. Well, I hope you found that useful, and that if you did, you'll come and see my future content. Stick around, there's an extra battle at Tier 10 coming up, but this is where I leave you, so this is the Noble Q signing out.